Hello, everybody. Welcome into ESPN FC Live here on YouTube alongside Miguel, Echegaray, Janusz, Michallik. I'm Dalen Cuff. Got a great show coming up for you. We're going to talk Champions League. We're going to react to yesterday. Obviously, today we've got Galatasaray and United kicking off here in about 45 minutes. We'll get to that a little later in the show. We'll talk about some injury issues and younger players. Are they leading to shorter careers? And we'll also chat about some transfers. But before we get into what happened yesterday, we are going to hear from the ESPN FC guys on the TV side of things, on the digital side of things, I should say. Let's say, draw for Newcastle that probably felt like a loss, the late penalty decision, the discussion, the kerfuffle, if you will. Here are the guys from ESPN FC.
You don't see Shaka very angry very often, do you, boys?
No.
We did in the 95th minute.
I thought it was a ridiculous decision. It goes against the grain of everything, kind of my own experiences as a footballer. It goes against when I was on the IFAB advisory panel, how we were trying to reshape the handball law. Nothing about this added up, and it just felt like an injustice. But then, one that if you're a little bit of a cynic and you see how this game is going, you almost expect it. You felt as though, especially when you see 8 minutes go up of injury time go up, there were 4 substitutions made in the game. I'm really not sure where the referee got 8 minutes just to start with, and you just I'm sorry, you just felt that something was coming. And this was it. I thought it was a poor decision. I've heard the explanations around why it should have been given and how the law has been redrafted and is supposed to be interpreted. Nothing about it makes footballing sense to me.
OK, so forget about it hitting the body, OK? It's all about, is the arm making the body bigger? So I spoke to Peter Walton and Mark Clattenburg, of course, both former Premier League referees, and they say it's not the right decision because the arm is in a natural position.
Because in England, let's just give some context to the hitting the body. IFAB changed the rules to take hitting the body out of the equation, then it deflects onto the arm. The old rule was once it deflected off a thigh or any part of the body onto the arm, it wouldn't be a penalty. They changed that. And now they're looking, ironically, in a meeting today, for next year to change it back again, which doesn't do Newcastle any favours. But in England, Premier League, they tried to go with this early on, 2 or 3 years ago, and decided, no, it was a disaster. So they've gone their own way. This would not have been a penalty in England. It shouldn't have still been. Even taking into account, they've ditched it coming off the body. The fact that his arm is not totally outstretched. But the other one, to me, is proximity. Mm-hmm. The proximity of the player delivering the ball in to where Livramento is, I'm going to say, 1.5 yards away. Now, for his arm to be outstretched from that proximity, I think it'd have to be a way above his head or a way out to the side. It's not. It's in a natural position, running to try and chase Dembele down, right? So even with the current laws that UEFA interpret through their Champions League referees, I still don't think it's a penalty kick.
All right, with that said, and why that's such a critical call is obviously if this would have gone through and Newcastle would have held on to win the match, they're in second, behind Dortmund in that position to move forward in the Champions League with 1 match to play. Now they find themselves in tied for third with Milan on 5 points, PSG sitting on 7, and Dortmund already through. So, Janusz, I'll leave with you. Do you agree with the guys, or do you think that ultimately the call was the correct call on the field?
No, it wasn't. But, look, we're looking for perfection in an imperfect world. There isn't a decision that would have been good for anybody, really, because you have to go. Look, it looked natural the way he ran. There's a perfect still picture of the way you run. But then we talk about players defending with the arms behind their back, and very often we agree that if that arm is a little bit outstretched, well, not the players, we don't agree with it all. But this is not the first one. We see worse calls when the arms are behind. That to me is a bigger problem than this. Of course, looking at this, he created a barrier, and that's what the referee went with. I don't necessarily agree with him, and I think that Szymon Marciniak is the best of the world, not just because he's Polish and I was born in Poland, but he just simply is. And he had to make that decision in consultation with VAR, with his friends. So to me, it was never a penalty. The law needs to be changed. I would add to it when it hits another part of the body, because I think that is important. You got to bring that back, because it kind of makes it a little bit easier, because if we did go by that, then it clearly wouldn't have been a penalty. There's no decision to make. I think the fact that wasn't taken into consideration, you see that the hand is out, but everybody knows that he was in a supernatural position. There's no subjectivity there. It's objective to me that he was made. Proximity, Craig mentioned, it is important. But you know what? All that goes out the window, because at some stage you have to make a decision. And these laws, these referees I don't think they are given a chance to think for themselves. It's just, look, we have to go with that. Because if he didn't go with that, we'd be still sitting here saying this is crazy. He didn't go by the book. So it's absolutely crazy. I don't want to start VAR conversation here. It could have gone either way, and nobody would have been happy. So here we are. That's what VAR brought to this game, which to me has always been a disaster. I said it from the beginning. It's just, we can't celebrate goals. It takes forever to do it. Where do we want to go from there? I was never a big fan of VAR. And I'll leave it at that.
Elami?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything that Janusz just said. He actually brought up some very important points that I always come back to when it comes to this situation. The problem with this specific situation, Dalen, is two things. One is the discussion about the handball rule, which, just like Janusz said, when VAR comes in, it goes back to the saying that I always say, a camel is a horse made by committee. There's just too many voices in there. And the referee in that game actually had a really excellent match up to that moment, which just like Janusz said, unfortunately, VAR comes in and says, ref, look, I think you need to take a look at this. So that already adds an implication. The other problem is, if we're asking ourselves, does the handball rule need to change? The problem here is that not only are we asking that question, but it's now also down to what governing body takes a direction, because this is a Champions League UEFA competition. And per the boys in the studio, and just like Dale Johnson said in his article, in this specific situation, this isn't a penalty in the Premier League, nor is it in La Liga. In fact, statistics show that UEFA gives this kind of deal 4 times as much as the Premier League and twice as much as La Liga. So that tells you, once again, that a camel is a horse made up by committee. We have a handball rule, and then you go to one competition and it's translated in one way. You go to the Premier League and it's something else. You go to La Liga and it's something else. So it's absolutely disastrous. Yesterday was a disaster. I feel very sorry for Newcastle, but they should have their heads held up high.
You heard Shaka talk about it, who was on the IFAB committee when they were working through this stuff. And as he said later in that show, maybe he should get back on the committee, because, this doesn't make much sense. And the fact that they're going to reassess this in March, which, again, is in the middle of the year. Like, the fact that you shouldn't be doing this in the offseason doesn't make any sense to me. But, Elmi, I'll come back to you. In terms of changing the law, even if you change it, you just also illuminate another piece of it. How it's adjudicated by the different governing bodies is a problem. How do we find uniformity in this? Because for the last many years now, nobody knows what handball is.
Yeah, the problem, okay, let's just use the example from yesterday, okay? Livramento, the proximity from Craig Burley's point is excellent, and it's very true. And actually, if you look at the highlight once again, Livramento is actually trying to move away from the ball. He's actually saying, oh, I'm very close in, I want to turn. The problem is right now is the differential between, okay, the ball hits the body first, and if your arm is in an unnatural position, which it wasn't, then you have a penalty. But then comes context, and that's where you have Premier League referees, UEFA referees, La Liga referees, Bundesliga referees trying to decide what it is. I beg, and I go back to agreeing with Janusz here, VAR has completely confused everything, and I beg, whoever makes these rules, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Just add some context. The ref should have looked at that screen and without any pressure. In fact, if VAR doesn't come in, he doesn't give it, right? The VAR suggested him to go to the screen, so he doesn't give it. It would have been a great decision.
That's the issue with VAR, because we now look at everything almost as if we wanted to be black and white. We took the decision making away from the referees. We took the trust away from the referees, because yesterday, even if VAR calls him on it, if Szymon Marciniak was able to make up his own mind, trust me. And again, I know him personally, so I hope this doesn't come across, but I know well enough, as I said, he is the best referee in the world for me, that he would not give that penalty if he knew that he doesn't have to kind of go by the book. I mean, they want to be consistent. So even if he maybe deep down with the way the rules are now, he probably said, look, this is the decision I'm going to make. Next time it comes up, I'm going to make the same decision. the time after, I'm going to make the same decision. But if he was trusted, and if he could make a decision, objective decision, or even subjective, just think for himself and put himself in that situation, I promise you that he wouldn't have given that decision. But I think there's that pressure now that once you called up by VAR and once you have to go to that screen, clear and obvious mistake. I don't know about that. As Luis just said, he wouldn't have given it. I think, it's all our fault because we continue to look at this in a minute detail. And no matter what decision we make, there's always two sides of the story. You can argue every which way, and we see it given every which way. That's why that consistency doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's the challenge you just outlined there, Janusz. For a referee, though, if you know the rules are written this way, and you're trying to be consistent to the rules, and you realize that VAR is that puts that all these external pressures versus what do I think, what's my interpretation, and as the official of the match, your interpretation should be, going through it should be, permeating the entire match, but we don't really have that anymore. All right, let's talk about the actual.
I think in a way, maybe he missed a great moment in his life because maybe he should have because you know what? We assume now that every time he called up to that TV, everybody says, oh, that's going to be given. Oh, that's not a goal. Whatever. Yeah. I almost wish that he went against against it all and said, you know what? I didn't see it on the field. I look at it. For me, this is never a penalty. Look, there would have been pressure because you didn't go by the book maybe, but I promise you 99% of people would have said, good for you. And I wish he did that. But, it's, in the moment, it's not so easy to think about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, in the last couple of years as VAR has gone on, I thought that referees would have a chance to look at it and then have their own interpretation and make a call. That does not seem to be the way it's been. It's almost 99% of the time they see whatever the VAR says and they go and do whatever that was dictated to them.
Where did we begin? A camel is a horse made by committees. Just too many people talking.
You got it. You got it. All right, let's get to the actual going forward, because this was the group I think everybody's most excited about when we saw the draw a couple months ago, and it's kind of proving out that way. It's very interesting. Pop up the standings right now. We know Dortmund is through, but Dortmund hosts PSG and a game that you want to be that seeded team. You want to win the group, so I imagine Dortmund is still going to play to win this game, especially some of the struggles they've had in the Bundesliga. Newcastle against Milan. That's obviously all to play for those teams. When you look at who's going through, it's Dortmund and who, in your mind, LME?
Well, listen, Dalen, before we get there, I want to give everybody a headache just to try and figure this one out. I'll try and be as quick as I can, okay? Because I wrote it down. As you said, Dortmund are already through, but in order to win the group, they need a draw or a win, or even lose by a goal to PSG. PSG need a win. PSG can only go through with a draw if AC Milan win or draw against Newcastle. PSG can only go through with a loss if Newcastle AC Milan is a draw. Newcastle have to win and hope PSG draw or lose. If the two teams are level, Newcastle will finish second on head-to-head. AC Milan must win and hope PSG lose. If the two teams are level, PSG will finish second in head-to-head. If Newcastle and Milan draw, Newcastle will drop into the Europa League on goal difference. I think it stays as it is. Dortmund and PSG will go through. It will be a draw in that game, Dalen, but AC Milan will win against Newcastle, sadly, I think.
I love how you gave us all those scenarios, which future reference, we need a graphic for that because I got lost about 3/4 of the way through that. But Janusz, do you concur with the assessment that we kind of go as it is right now as the table stands?
He lost me at hello. I have no idea what that is. I had everything written. I had everything written, down, and now he started with all that. So, man.
You should have muted me.
Look, I'm going to tell you what I think or what I want. I don't know if what I want to happen because, again, no bias against anybody here because they're all big names, but unfortunately they're not playing big really for the most part, right? When you looked at that group, you said to yourself, "Oh, what quality?" Historically, maybe, but in these terms, I think that Dortmund would draw against PSG. Maybe I can see that Newcastle will beat Milan, and then you're going to have to repeat what happened head-to-head and goals because I can't.
If Newcastle goes through in that assessment, if Dortmund and
that's what I thought. I think Milan at this stage, they're a mess with injuries. And I think they're an okay team. Are they capable of going there and winning it? Yes, but I think it's St. James's. I liked a lot about this Newcastle team, not just in the Premier League, but in that game. Even last night, that first half. Obviously, in the second half, you knew away that pressure was always going to come. And decision or not, we saw the number of chances. That Bradley Barcola missed himself, and the number of chances they've created. So in a way, maybe they did get lucky, but they did get a draw. Remember, they were truly outplayed on match day one against Milan away, and they found a way in their main journey here in the Champions League as well. And I think they may do to Milan what they did to PSG at home as well. So I somehow think that Newcastle will find a way.
The only thing that worries me, Dalen, about Newcastle is that between then and now, they're going to play Everton, who are dying for everything, which is fair enough. It's just a game against Everton, with all due respect to them regarding all the points. But they also have to play Tottenham. And that's going to be a hell of a match in terms of the physicality of it, the pace of it. So regarding how healthy they are going up to that game, we'll see what happens. If Newcastle win and PSG lose or draw, then Newcastle make it through.
Yeah, and the injuries have been an issue for United, for Newcastle throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
Obviously, they also do have United this weekend too, which is going to be a big game. We'll get to United in their Champions League game starting in about 30 minutes. We'll come to that later in the show. All right, let's move on to a kind of a broader topic. And LME, you wrote a piece that's great on ESPN.com. You can check it out about young players. Obviously, Gavi going away international duty, getting a serious knee injury, the amount of minutes he's put forward at Barcelona. Pedri also having injury issues at Barcelona. Bukayo Saka played 87 straight games at one point. That streak got broke earlier this year. Premier League games, obviously mix in international duty there too. Younger players, a lot of stress on their body, and some injury issues. As you look at the landscape right now in world football and how many minutes these guys are playing, what is your conclusion? Are we going to see these injuries hamper what could be really bright careers?
Yeah, Dalen, I wrote this a few weeks ago in my column, and it's been an ongoing theme for me. And then Sam Tighe wrote a great piece about it as well, with more perspective regarding, as you mentioned, with these young players. And I'll give you some stats here, and this is per Fifth Pro, the organization that represents professional players. And they came out with a study sort of comparing these young stars of today and how much they have played as opposed to the others in the past. Vinicius Jr., for example, by 22 years old, which is what he is, has already played close to 19,000 minutes for the club, for Real Madrid, and previous clubs, of course, and the Brazilian national team. That's more than twice as Ronaldinho by that time of that age. Pedri, who is heavily discussed in Sam's piece, by 20, he's played more than 12,000 minutes. That's 25% more than Xavi at the same age. Kylian Mbappe, by 24, has played 26,962 minutes, and that's an astonishing almost 50% more than Thierry Henry at the same time. So, it doesn't surprise me at all that you're seeing this multiple injuries. And by the way, the list goes on and on. Bukayo Saka is another example, right? Zaire Emery, the young teenager from PSG as well. And Gavi, of course, the disastrous situation that happened there. But it just goes to show a few things. One, I think there's too much reliance on these players. These players want to play. Obviously, it's what they love. And I feel like sometimes managers, in fact, I heard Luis de Campos, the Spanish national team manager, said, look, before he got injured, Gavi just wants to play, and that's what the best type of players do. They just want to play. That's fair enough. But when you're at that age, you have to, at some way, balance what's happening, especially since it's not just domestic competition, it's also European competition. Then it's Winter World Cup, which, by the way, another study showed that has been a cause of injuries as well. This season in the Premier League, it's almost 200 injuries. We're not even in December. So there is a problem here, and it's one, the overwhelming number of tournaments and competitions that we play, whether they're official or not. And the other, I think there is a lot of reliance on these young athletes. And part of it is also because, these players are now benefiting from such tremendous sort of coaching throughout the years. They're becoming better and better at a younger age. But this is also coming at a hindrance, hence by the minutes that I just told you. So it is a worry. And I hope that in the future, we'll be able to see something different. But at the end of the day, my friend, money talks. And these tournaments and these matches are going to continue, so on and so forth.
Yeah, Janusz, is it more of the organizational structure, the different, the club, the country, the more competitions, more games put in? Or is there a responsibility for the club as well, particularly to protect some of these younger players? You got to maximize your value and your asset, and you got to win games, but you want to have that player play for a long time.
Sure, but they have everything to do that, right? I mean, especially the big clubs. I mean, they have the medical departments. They have just about every metric you can possibly have, right? I don't see a, I don't want to say I don't see a problem, but play them. They're good, they're young, and they should be playing. There's more competition. Yes, the careers are going to be shorter. That's just the nature of the beast. This is football right now. Now, I don't know much about. You guys probably know a little bit better American football, but I know that the careers are getting shorter, and they play once a week. But demands of the game are such that for some reason or another, these careers are shorter. Now, obviously, there's a lot of hitting, this, that, or the other. So there's more chance for injury in American football than I suppose in our football. But these guys will, of course, always want to play. Look, one outlier for me is Pedri, because we all saw it coming. The entire world, right, saw it coming when he played those, whatever it was, 87 games, and even they sent him to the Olympics for God knows what reason. We knew he was going to break down. He broke down, and now he may never be the same, right? Well, he's not looking the same now, even watching him yesterday. So that was outrageous, because that was one competition that he didn't need. But with everybody else, look, I mean, we used to say, well, young players don't get an opportunity because they're not young enough. Now it's the other way around. Look, play them, they're good. There's never guarantees that if you spare them that they're gonna have great careers forever. So I'm not saying here that run them to the ground, but I will also push back on the fact that, I mean, these people know. I mean, look at the coaching staff and the analytics and everybody that they have at the club, right? They got to catch it, because young players will always want to play, and at times take them out. But I wouldn't be taking young, great star that contributes immensely to my team out of my team just for that reason. So somewhere down the line, he may still be great, because we will never know that.
I see Janusz's point, Dalen, but one of the issues right now is that they are running these players to the ground. That's the point. That's the problem. That's what these numbers are showing. And when you're 20 years old, 19 years old, then there has to be something evaluated to show that, come on, we have to think about the marathon, not a sprint. I get Janusz's point, which is about you entered this professional job as a professional player. You've been playing probably from the age of 14, 15 at a very high level. But I think that what's happening now is the odds are against you. It's not just that, look, injuries happen or whatever, but not only injuries happen, we're going to give you as much overwhelming minutes as you can take in order for you to see if you can handle it. And look what's happened to Pedri, Gavi, Jude Bellingham is another one, by the way, playing 30% more than what Wayne Rooney did back in the day. So, to me, it's not just about, yes, I understand these are young players, they're professionals, and we should be able to give them all the opportunity they can to play. But sometimes we have to think about the human being as well, because these players also want to play until later on in life as well.
Yeah, see, the issue, and I know you don't mean that, the issue with that is we're just saying young players, but those are individual cases. Everybody's different. If you look at Bukayo Saka, for example, right? I mean, you've all seen and you've all read. I mean, super professional, gets there early in the morning, doesn't do anything, but works out, gets strong. I mean, this is a guy that doesn't go out, doesn't do absolutely anything. He's a strong man that's been playing a lot. I'd like to think that Mikel Arteta is a smart manager. And he's proven that over the years as a player and as a manager right now. He understands that's probably he's taken a little bit of a risk, but he's taken that risk. I don't necessarily think it's just because of pressure. I really don't. I think you have to look at these players in a different way on an individual basis. And for some, sometimes just bad luck. With Gavi, yes, of course, we can sit here and says, well, it was an overload. That's why his ACL went. Maybe not. Mine went. I was standing. I literally standing, right? And okay, everybody can go as deep into that foxhole as you want, rabbit hole, I should say. But I just think that sometimes we just make these statements overall that these, there's more games, and I get that, by the way. I understand that they have to be managed, but I think we have to be careful in terms of saying, who do we trust? Who's doing the right job? And some are doing better job than others. And I think that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, my point, very quickly, my point wasn't a statement. It's derived from facts and statistics from what's happening. That's it.
And I think where the nuance between both of you guys are saying is the club, though, when they have these facts and information, how do you act upon them? Because
I'm Dalen, you know what? Yeah, no, sorry, buddy, to interrupt. But you know what? I'm not even blaming like the likes of Mikel Arteta or something like that. But it's also like, another Club World Cup, a newly formatted Club World Cup, more international friendlies, the Nations League. I mean, like at some point, they need a break. And I feel that it's not even just the physical, but it's also the mental. That's it.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think that for sure is true. All right, let's move forward here into a quick transfer conversation. I'm gonna LME, you go first. Janusz, you follow on these guys. It'll be 4 different conversations, real quick. Is it the right move, and do we see it happening in the winter window? Victor Osimhen to Arsenal. LME, you first.
Well, I mean, Dalen, I know that you would love that one, right? I think in many ways.
Sorry, Eddie, but that'd be nice.
I think in many ways it would be a fantastic, idealistic type of move for Arsenal, because to me, as we look ahead to the end of the season, if Arsenal really want to win this, I don't think you can just rely on Gabriel Jesus and Eddie Nketiah. You need a proper goal scorer. The problem is the budget. You spent a lot of money on Declan Rice in the summer. How much money can you really spend? And is Victor Osimhen going to be available, especially in that January transfer window? Obviously, the contract negotiations with Napoli is another argument. I mean, Ivan Toney has also been a topic of discussion. I wonder if he is better suited, just because he doesn't have to worry about acclimating himself to a brand new league. But either one is a great purchase. I just don't see it happening because, realistically speaking, can Arsenal even afford it?
Janusz?
I think they could. But anyway, look, Victor Osimhen is going to be mentioned with everybody. Chelsea, for sure, are buying him in January, right? If I had a choice, I go to Arsenal because that project is well ahead. He's coming from a very good team that just won the Scudetto, right, in terms of Napoli, if he does come. Perfect system for him, wide game. Beautiful, isn't it? With Martinelli and Saka for him, great on the break, which Arsenal from time to time, obviously a transitional team when they need be, and very good in finding him early, so he's got the pace. I think it also sends a message to Arsenal, because it doesn't really, if they got Osimhen, I wouldn't really think of it as missing piece to win it this year. If they win it, great. I mean, it can give him an advantage to some degree to maybe keep up with Manchester City or maybe even win it. But for the years to come, it just means that progress and the project that Mikel Arteta has taken on, now it sends a message to everybody. This Arsenal team is going to be up there for maybe, years to come as well. So if I were Osimhen, and let's just assume that I had a choice to go to Chelsea or Arsenal, wouldn't even think twice. And if I'm Arsenal, I spend any amount of money that I've had to get him.
Yeah, as LME said, I would love to see that happen. Probably Eddie Nketiah, the loser there, but he's been solid. But if you're going to really challenge City, you got to hit that next level. Real quick on these ones. Timo Werner obviously saw him come to Chelsea from Leipzig, struggle, goes back to Leipzig. Not exactly happy there. Janusz, there are rumors that he may come to United. Is that what United need in the window?
I saw a rumor, him going to Real Madrid. I mean, look, he needs to nail down a starting position in Leipzig. He hasn't been playing. He hasn't been scoring. I mean, there's had some injuries as well. But, I think at this stage, being having already played in the Premier League, everybody deserves a second chance. And you know what? Maybe he'd be better. But I wouldn't take a chance on that.
LME?
Yeah, there's nothing much more to add. I don't know. United have like a laundry list of things that they need, I feel sometimes. Like it just always goes back to the midfield. So Timo Werner, obviously we know how good he can be. As Janusz said, it's not necessarily like he's having his best season, but it's not necessarily a United target that I would go for. I always feel that in order for United to be better, right, they need somebody else in that midfield that can help out, because Christian Eriksen's not going to do it. And Scott McTominay can every now and again. We have Casemiro, who's reaching the golden years of his solitude and legacy. So you need somebody else. So I don't know. Timo Werner, depends how much money you spend for him. But if you're United, I'm willing to bet that they're probably going to spend on the wrong player anytime soon.
And truer words have never been said in recent years. Okay. Last one on the transfer window quickly. LME. Santiago Jimenez. Spurs has got all types of different injuries. Would Jimenez be a guy that they could plug in that could really help them get back on track?
So Santiago Jimenez usually gets a little bit of criticism from Mexican national team fans because they're silly and they don't watch exactly what this kind of player is like. He is such a talent. I've been a fan of Santiago Jimenez for a long time. And in many ways, the Eredivisie suits him perfectly. It's the first step in his European journey, etc. Does it suit Tottenham? Well, I'm not sure, because I don't know exactly how he can help out in terms of a very mobile human son and then James Maddison, who really likes to get the ball and create. But I wouldn't put it against it. I mean, I think Postecoglou can make it work. I'll just tell you this, Dalen, very quickly. I want Santiago Jimenez in the Premier League. I think he's fantastic, and I think he'd help a lot of other teams. But we'll see how it works out. Is Tottenham the number one option for the Mexican? I don't know.
Okay, let's get to the game because we got about 14 minutes, so we're kicking off here in the Champions League Wednesday fixtures. The big one is United going to Galatasaray. Pretty much got to win that match to look. They're in the bottom of that group right now. They fell to Galatasaray at Old Trafford. Everybody's been mentioning the 30 years ago when that team was there and failed to succeed and got knocked out of the Champions League back in the early 90s under Fergie. Janusz, I start with you. Is United, from an odds maker standpoint, they are a slight favorite on the road to win the match. What is your take?
It's a big test, right? I mean, we've all been talking about Manchester United and Erik ten Hag, how poor they've been. And quietly, as we've talked about, they snuck up on everybody and now have won, 5 out of 6 games in the Premier League. And if you look at their positioning, with all the injuries, with all the negativity on and off the pitch that they've had, they're having a good run. This is like an early catalyst. I look at that. What a test that is, right? Because they lose, and to a degree, obviously not Premier League, but to a degree, not back to square one, but there's a lot of questions. Again, early exit from the Champions League from a big club. They win, and imagine that momentum, right? The momentum they've had in the Premier League right now, there or thereabout, it allows Ten Hag to have some peace and quiet. I think it lifts everybody and puts Manchester United maybe in a little bit better view to everybody around the world. So, look, this is a massive game, massive test for them. As they always say, a difficult place to go to. It's just funny how we say that because I love the atmosphere, when you go to Turkey, but it never pans out. Like, over the years we say this, and these Turkish teams never do anything. We did see what Galatasaray did at Manchester United. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because this is for real. You look at this Galatasaray side and you say, wow, but I don't know if they're capable of that. I would agree that my gut feeling tells me against all odds that they'll get the points here. They'll get the 3 points here. Not necessarily because I feel all that confident, but sometimes when that momentum starts a little bit, you just kind of, relax a little bit. And if they do, I do think that they're capable of getting 3 points here.
Okay, Munich is clear in that group. Copenhagen and Galatasaray 1 point ahead of United, who sit on 3. That game kicks off in a few minutes. Some of us are invested in the draw no bet play there. Let's go Galatasaray. And let me, to wrap up the show here, talk at Arsenal. They take on Lens, who beat them in France earlier in the Champions League fixtures here. They're on 9 points, PSV on 5, Lens on 5, and Sevilla on 2. Really, everybody still is in this theoretically when you make up the match with the Gunners.
Yeah, if Sevilla win, Dalen, then not even a ball has to be kicked, and Arsenal through to the knockout stages would be fantastic for your team, obviously, as they're also looking to win the Premier League and back in the knockout stages. But regardless of that Sevilla-PSV match, I think this is a vital match for Arsenal against Lens. Not because, of the huge importance, as we mentioned, the win can already happen before they've even kicked the ball, but I think it can really ignite once again another fire for Mikel Arteta. If this is your season, Arsenal, then show it by making it to the knockout stages without the help of anybody. Win that group. Obviously, Arsenal has to be a little bit careful regarding what's coming up in the weekend as well, as they face another game and try to retain the top of the table. But try and get this job done and early, and try and show at home that you can take care of business. Again, if Sevilla win, then it becomes that much easier. But I think it's going to be a very important, significant, symbolic win, not just a mathematical one for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal. If you're trying to get here, then make it happen.
You said everything about Arsenal, but the story so far for me is I'm just looking at the La Liga and the Spanish teams. Sociedad, Real Madrid, Atleti, Barcelona, top of their group. Sevilla, if they qualify, all 5 teams are going through. All 5 aren't going to be at the top of the table, but quietly, we often talk about Premier League on this and that, but look at La Liga once again. It kind of goes up and down at times, but they're back with a vengeance.
Well, Janusz, I was asked about Arsenal. I mean, if I was asked about other
No, but that's what look, I read other stories somewhere here, important stories. So that's why you said it perfectly about Arsenal. So I wanted to change it a little bit because remember before the show, I was looking at Sevilla because I just noticed in the table where all the Spanish teams are, and they're all at the top of their group. And that's not.
No, he's right. And listen,
Sociedad.
Real Sociedad to me are, by the way, I did a big project on them last year. They are really subtly one of the best teams out there without getting that much praise. They are a tremendous football club. The way they develop their players from their academy all the way up, their culture, their system, they don't spend that much amount of money and what they're doing. So I agree with you. It's
just kind of that Latin angle a little bit, that Spanish, and you're pushing back on me, Luis. Unbelievable,
No. Listen, Dalen asked me about Arsenal. I gave him Arsenal. You want to talk La Liga? We'll talk La Liga.
No. Oh, good.
Great stuff, fellas. Sevilla hosting PSV in Group B. That'll be fun to watch. Always great to be on with you guys. ESPN FC live here on YouTube Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern time. And, of course, you get ESPN FC every day, 6 o'clock Eastern on weekdays, 5 o'clock Eastern on the weekends. Fellas, enjoy the games today. We out.